Hi, my name's Garrett Portwood, and I am doing this persuasive speech on the appropriate age for a child to have a cell phone. Um, this is probably a more controversial topic, especially since I don't have kids, but I'm just pulling up a couple different articles and journals that are in support of this, and it seems to be pretty consistent. I am a little biased because when I was around the coming into my teenager years, I got my first cell phone at the age of 13. I believe this is the best time to give a child one. But at that time, we only had the little sliding or flip phones where it was so cool if you even had a full keyboard on it. I didn't even have my first smartphone until I was 16. So obviously the landscape's changed a good bit. Now I have my computer here just for some notes and just some quotes that I can read off. But I did want to present this proposing that, hey, maybe 13 would be a good age for a smartphone as well, just based on some different studies that might support this. In my own personal experience, just to get the bias stuff out of the way, I've seen my younger cousins. I'm the oldest of my generation of kids in my family, and so I progressively watched as the age got younger and younger, and the effect that this had on like cousins and younger siblings. This was, you know, in most cases, typically noticeable in their everyday interests. Um, Whereas when I was a kid, I would want to come over and play with my cousins and siblings by going out to the pool or running around the neighborhood or riding bikes, and it was more of a social interaction, and that was great. Um, but theirs is very different, and I can see them pushing off their friends and family and things so they can stay inside and watch videos or play games on their iPads or whatever that may be. Now, video games aren't a part of this, but definitely watching kids younger than the age of 10 sit around on a couch all day and watch videos on their iPad is kind of tough considering the way that I was raised. Um, I think these things based on personal experience, and I went and found a couple of sites that were in support of this, and I think it's pretty agreeable for the most part. Um, but the two things I wanted to cover are social media and just basically the pros and cons of giving a kid a cell phone um, at such a young age. And when I say a young age, I'm talking like 5 to 7, giving them their own iPad or giving them their own smartphone, which a lot of people would typically agree that that's not okay. But it does happen. Um, and why I think that 13 is a good age for this to start. So, for pros and cons, um, why is it beneficial? First off, I believe that there are plenty of upsides, but there's also some paired downsides, and a lot of those intermingle, um, such as social media being intertwined with cell phone use nowadays. So beneficial. First case was done on a website called netivis.org. A study by Child Guide magazine found that 31% of parents bought cell phones for their kids for security reasons in case children needed to contact parents. If a kid gets lost or, God forbid, they're kidnapped or something like that, then this could help them be located or found, or if they're in a scenario that they need to get out of and need to contact their parents, they have a way of doing that. So safety. There's also the concept of, at younger ages, learning while playing, which I'm very much an advocate for, but this also bars a lot of learning experiences outside of technology, which can be great for a kid having hands-on learning, especially when we're talking about like 5 to 7, 5 to 10 age, something like that. Um, that hands-on stuff is important. Learning those things in the real world rather than watching a video on it, or maybe doing an activity online that helps them learn. But there are positives for technology taking part in learning while they're playing, is what they call it. And also entertainment, just to keep them busy with something. But back in my day, and I sound like an old man saying this, um, we entertained ourselves with what we had. It wasn't something that was in our pocket all the time, and it's great in some circumstances, but you see it do a lot more damage when they constantly expect things to be ready for them right away. Their expectations are a lot higher for how quick they can get things done and how quick they can get information, and it's just that constant state of immediate fulfillment. So on the other side of this, there's the destructive side from netivist.org as well. Um, and that would be, of course, there are bad people online. Um, they're going to take advantage of kids using social media apps. And there's a lot of danger in that. Specifically, in this example, it was saying to take inappropriate pictures or videos using Instagram or Snapchat. It's also been an instrument for bullying with their peers, sexual harassment, and blackmail among children, which is also a huge topic on young suicides, when people are blackmailed over these sexual encounters. And that goes into teenage years too. So this is very dangerous. Um, Now, so some substitutes for this are clearly like being able to track your kid in different ways. Technology's advanced. We can put trackers on these kids when they're younger, and it can kind of veer into like invasion of privacy when it's the later teenage years. But definitely when they're kids, you don't have to track them just by a cell phone. If you really want to know their location, you can use trackers and things like that. Keeping a child engaged comes down to the quality and the creativity of your teaching methods, whether that's just a normal everyday life lesson or whether that's teaching them something that's going to help them in school, teaching them something about math or science or history. There are hands-on ways to learn this. It just comes down to creativity. And when you have the internet to rely on, you can kind of throw that to the wind because there are other people that are creative out there. So that makes it a good tool and a bad tool because you can kind of give up that control and just let someone else do it for you. So obviously social media and cell phone use are very intertwined, and there's just a couple things from two different websites that I looked up. Um, Here's a quote from the first one, um, which will be Science Direct. Social technology behaviors are not individual acts in isolation, but rather choices made within larger social contexts. During this critical development period of seeking autonomy from parents and exploring sexuality and identity with peers, the peer social context becomes especially critical. According to the transformation framework, the social media context affords adolescents a natural field to practice their peer relationship, building skills through self disclosure, digital communication, and providing social support. So nowadays, there is this huge thing about social media where it's taking these kids' lives by storm and they don't know how to deal with it. And if they're left out of that, it can also cause development issues. So moving forward, it's good for them to learn these things at the right age once they're ready. And this is a case by case basis. Like one kid might be ready for social media or a cell phone a lot earlier than another. So that also has to be taken into consideration. Another quote from one of these pages is most social media apps require users to be at least 13 years old, but in a recent poll, parents shared that 50% of children 10 to 12 years old and 33% of children 7 to 9 years old use social media apps. So age 13 is repeated a couple times in these two different articles. And I believe that this is probably one of the best times for a child to start experiencing them and navigating it for themselves. Um, so, though many of these concepts can be taken as subjective, I showed some of these sources and studies as a way to sort of back the argument up. We should be very wary when children are able to access the far reaches of the internet. It may have great potential, but it also poses a great threat, and we need to be cautious of that. Um, so that's basically what I have for this. And I believe that 13 is probably the right age for a kid to get started on social media and cell phone use.